Hello and welcome, fellow motorsports fans. I can't quite believe it is actually happening, but today we have a special guest. We have talked about him a lot on the show, competing in the F4 USA, formerly and the Formula Regional Americas Championship. It is Titus Sherlock. Hello and welcome, mate.
Yes, thank you for having me, and excited to be the first guest on your show here.
Yeah, cheers. I'd love to have you. In preparation for this, obviously try to find out a little more about your past and your career. And I have noticed it's a bit difficult. Personally, I've followed you since 2023, so last season in the F4 USA, and I've seen you appear in the USF Juniors, but I wasn't watching back in 2022. But I actually want to go way back. When did you start racing? When did you get that spark for motorsports?
Yeah, my story's a bit unique, really. I actually started, all the posts are deleted now, so you can't see them, but I actually started in the dirt. In off-road trucks when I was around 10. So I did that for a year because my dad did that, and it's a class called mod carts. It's for like 10 to 15-year-olds, and they're pretty fast, but yeah, most people didn't really start there. I did that for a year, and then I had to stop. And then I went to an F1 race in 2018, I believe it was, at COTA, and I kind of got the hook for F1 more. And then I started karting pretty soon after that. So I started karting when I was around 13, I think, so kind of relatively late. Yeah, after that, just kind of the typical karting, only for 2 years, and then went to like you said, USF Juniors, and then F4, FR. So that's all I got here.
Yeah, it's actually not a super long run up, I guess, especially only 2 years of karting. I did see a few pictures of the dirt racing, like the very oldest on your Instagram. I did actually find. Yeah, those looked really cool. And yeah, 2 years in the SCUSA Pro Tour, right? Or
I did 1 year. It's the SCUSA Pro Kart. They have a Pro Tour and Pro Kart, so they're similar, but Pro Kart's more like West Coast and Pro Tour's more like everywhere. So I did that for 1 year, then some Rock Cup races as well. It was a championship, doesn't exist anymore, but it was called California Rock, and that was really it. I did the Vegas race once, and that was it. So I really only did karting seriously for like a year, and did it in general for like 2. So not too long in that.
Well, evidently it is enough. Is that more common in the US? It sometimes feels like when I look at the CVs of drivers that they don't start quite as young on average as in Europe. Is that just a feeling, or?
I'd say some of us, yeah. There's definitely more of us, I think, that didn't do karting as much when you're young. This might be a controversial opinion, but I don't think it's actually as important as I think a lot of people make it seem. It's definitely a good place to start, and to do it for a couple of years is great. But yeah, especially the higher level karting, when you're spending the ridiculous money, I just don't think it's necessary. You know, as long as you're getting the laps, that's what really matters. And racing at least like a regional level, I think that's fine. So yeah, I'd say that's probably more common here. And I think there's some great examples, like Max Taylor, actually one of my friends. He started off very late as well, same age as me, maybe even a year older than me. And he's obviously very quick and didn't do much karting either. So it's good to have, but it's not, I guess, required.
That's a really interesting take and a cool one, and one that at least I feel like we can observe from the outside. But of course, your brain tells you, yeah, they must be a lot better if they start at like 8 or whatever. But I guess it can work, is the lesson to be learned here. You don't have to start super young. Now then, you made the move, you jumped into cars. I've actually seen, before USF Juniors, you also raced something else, which I've never heard of, correct?
Yeah, well, it's a Formula Ford or Formula 1600. It was just a school series. So yeah, I did that before like properly transitioning, just to get the kind of the bearings going. But yeah, I did that for a little bit before USF Juniors, but the USF Juniors was the first like proper championship I did.
How old were you at this point? So, like, I must feel like 17-ish, right?
I was 16,
16, yeah.
And then turned 17, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Just to put it into context for those listening, I do like this about the American scene, that you can start a lot younger. There's not as much of an age limit.
Yeah, in USF Juniors, this past year you actually could race at 13 as long as you turn 14, which in my opinion is a little bit too young. But now it's 14 and up, which I think is fine. And yeah, I think F4 it's 15, so we get an extra year here, and you actually see this year some drivers coming over from Europe that are racing here because they're allowed to a year earlier. So it's an advantage for them.
And I think it's awesome. It also makes the series a lot better for, well, us watching, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm all about that. So then, what was the transition like after, well, I guess, dirt experience and 2 years of karting? How difficult is that step to get into a proper car for the first time?
It's very difficult. From a go-karting experience is great, like I said, but it's so different. Like everything, you're kind of learning from scratch again. Um, and doing it in a car is, in my opinion, it's so much harder. In a go-kart, I feel like anyone could step in and be like a second off because it's kind of simple, if that makes sense. But in a car, there's more going on. You got all the weight as well, and it takes more time to get closer to the pace. And yeah, the first year in cars, I'd say I struggled a bit, and I also don't think I had the best. Well, I'm not gonna get into that too much, I guess, but yeah, I've gotten a lot better, and it's actually really encouraging to see. Like, after my first year in cars, I was like, man, this might not be for me. Like I didn't do too well, and then the year after that, which was last year, I had a very good season. So and then this season was even better, and this past off-season testing, it's been going really well as well, and I'm really proud of that. So it's showing that you can still improve at my ripe age of just turned 20. But yeah, it's a tough transition, and there's some drivers that are very good in go-karts that get into a car and just never quite get it, because it's so different, and vice versa. Some people aren't that great in karts, nothing too special, then they get in the car and it's like, wow, they're Senna, So it's very different, but it's a tough learning curve.
Now I have to ask, do you have an example in mind for someone who's like been, forgettable in karts, but has really taken to cars that you can think of?
I don't want to call anyone out too
well,
too much.
It's in a positive way.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, I guess I'm gonna kind of say myself. Not that I'm like a crazy superstar or anything, but I'm much better in a car. I believe it suits me better than I was in a go-kart. I mean, in a go-kart, again, I had limited experience and I started late, so like it's not as fair of an example. But when I did national races, I was bottom end of the mid pack probably. Never really fighting for wins or even close to that really. And then in F4, 2 years later, I'm fighting for wins. So I guess myself, I guess I could say.
Oh, well, as the best example to give, I guess.
Yeah.
I know you don't want to call anyone out, so that's why I am asking for positive examples, but I also want to get a little feel for the people you're racing against. And so I did have the question, who is the best driver you've raced against and why is it Patrick? But you can, of course, name someone else.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, well, this past year, in F4 and FR, I would definitely say it probably was Patrick. Of course, we went to FR Oceania, which was a whole can of worms, and obviously Belinsky was very good there. Christian Mansell was also very strong. I also raced against Nikita Johnson, who was very good. Matt Clark as well was very good in that USF Juniors year. So probably those ones. But yeah, in the last 2 years, Patrick and I have butt heads a little bit in the last couple months, but I'll be the first to admit he's very talented. And I think whatever he'll race in the future, he'll be very good at.
No doubt about it. Yeah, it's been really fun watching you two go up against each other again and again over 2 years now. I do like when these series give you time to actually develop some rivalries and stuff as well alongside. So that's always great fun. Since you already mentioned him, Nikita Johnson, I think he's probably, from all the drivers mainly driving on the American ladder, I think it's fair to say he's the one with the most like interest from Europe at the moment. So maybe you've got something to say about him. How highly do you rate Nikita Johnson? Maybe not just based off when you race against him, whatever comes to mind, but
yeah, I mean, he's clearly very talented. He fought for the Pro 2000 championship this year, and he had a bunch of wins. I mean, I don't even know how many, but a lot. And I think he'll do well in whatever he races next year. Oh, he's already announced for GB3, I think.
Yes.
So I think he'll be fighting for the title there if I had to put money on it. So I rate him very highly. He's a nice kid as well. I went to his birthday party a few years ago. So
that's really cool. So, okay, back to your racing. Well, that was enough about you, Piers, but I had to ask. Obviously, the Formula Regional Americas is a bit of a weird place as a series, I think is fair to say, right? Like not the most popular or most prestigious series by any stretch, but still tends to produce like super solid races year after year, really. Like the graduates from that series are class. Like how good of a championship would you consider the Formula Regional Americas in general? Like just to put that into perspective.
I think American racing as a whole is a bit underrated. Of course, that includes the USF side as well. They have big, strong grids. But even in FR this year, like I already said, Patrick is a very good driver. I think he can be up there with the best of them in any championship. I'd like to think that I'm a pretty decent driver as well. We had Ryan Sheehan, who was strong. Nicholas Ambiato was strong on his weekends. He had good pace sometimes, and he was very quick. I mean, he randomly won one race by like 12 seconds. That one is a little disappointing at the time, but yeah. So I think I'd overall say it's underrated. Of course, it struggles a little bit with car count. I think the most we had was 16. The least we had was 11, maybe. So it struggles with that a bit. But I can't say too much, but I think that problem will get better as time goes on. And some more teams are planning on joining from what I understand. So that's exciting. And obviously it's the only championship that uses the Ligier FR. And having driven both, I actually prefer it to the Titus. I know the Titus isn't anyone's favorite really, but I actually like the Ligier. I think it suits me really well. And it has a lot of power, which is really fun. And next year they're actually getting 8 rounds, up from 7, which was also up from 6. So that's going in the right direction as well. And unfortunately, they lost their kind of big scholarship that they had a couple years ago. That was a ride in Super Formula, which was kind of crazy, but it was something really cool to work for. And now I think it's only 100K, which in the scheme of all of racing isn't too bad actually, considering that I don't think you get much more for winning F3, for example. I think it's like 200K or something. So I mean, it's not too bad, but I think it's an underrated series, and it's also very cost effective for what you're getting. I know that's not something that a lot of people will consider just like watching it, right? But you compare USF Pro 2000 and FR, which are kind of equals in a way. And I'll say USF Pro is about double the cost, or a little bit less than double. So it's a big difference there, and it's a great way to get a lot of seat time. And they go to great tracks too. So.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think this makes a lot of sense. Too many people only consider, like, going back on Wikipedia, seeing what did graduates of X series end up doing, and obviously you'll find out maybe not so much from like Formula Region Americas, for example. But I guess it's always the mistake of it's because it's a cheaper series, you will get people that maybe they might be good, but their career doesn't ever end up going anywhere. You know how it is. So it ends up looking worse in hindsight, I guess. I think that may be fair to say. Since you brought up the different chassis, that's super fascinating to me because I rarely ever think about these not driving them. So
right.
How would you say, what's the difference between the two? Can you quickly outline them maybe for us, and why do you think the Ligier suits you more?
Yeah, obviously they're built to the same regulations, right? So there's not like a world between them. But I actually think this opinion of mine is more just my opinion because my peers actually disagree with me. So take this with a grain of salt. But I felt like if you look at the pace difference between my teammates from FR Oceania to back at home, it's like I went to Oceania and I had no idea how to drive is what it looked like pretty much. And I just really struggled with that car with the rear, and it felt very unpredictable to me. And that could have been the setup, that could have been that particular car, because there's a lot of manufacturing differences that people don't like to hear about, but it could have just been the one I had. But the car here in America, it's heavier. It's actually quite a bit heavier. But for some reason that just really, the kind of the slow down, rotate, and get out of the corner just kind of suits me better than the rolling in a way. So I guess that could be a reason. Something that also I'm sure no one would ever think about is the seating position is actually quite different. In the Titus, I found the steering wheel was like in my chest pretty much. Felt like I was turning like this. Or in the Ligier, the steering wheel is a bit farther away and higher, so it's almost like you're in a go-kart. It's like, I don't know. I just really like the feeling of the Ligier. And the turbo lag is pretty unique to a single-seater car. It has this huge turbo lag where you have no power, and then all of a sudden you have all the power in the world, which kind of takes some time getting used to. But once you get used to it, it's fun. And I'm just faster in it, and that's probably the only reason I really like it more. I can name all these different little things, but I'm just faster in it, so I'm just gonna say I like that.
To be fair, that is the best reason to like a race car.
Yep.
If you say it's heavier and more, less rolling kind of driving style, would you assume you're going to be better off in faster machinery in general?
It seems like every time I take the step up, I'm better than I was in the championship before, which is really encouraging. I've been testing the USF Pro 2000 car recently, and that's actually very different. It has so much rolling speed because it's so light and has so much aero for actually how big it is. and I've actually been going really, really well in that, which has been really encouraging. The fall combine test, which you might have saw, which was kind of all the teams came together. I was really bad there. That wasn't all on me. I'm just gonna say that the engine was tired, and we knew it was gonna be tired, so I was gonna be slow. But we got a new engine in it for these last two, the academy tests, and I've been either first or second or third in like every session. So it's been really positive since then. And it's just nice to see that, you know, in go-karts, like my confidence was like down here. I was like, oh, as I step up, I'm gonna get worse and worse, and it's gonna get harder, and it's gonna snowball. But it's kind of been the opposite. Every time I've stepped up, I've just gotten faster, and every year has just been better. So it's been really encouraging.
Well, let's hope the trend continues then. I've seen, if I'm not entirely mistaken, you've also ventured a little into tin top racing at the end of this year.
Yeah, I had the one-off opportunity to do a Ferrari challenge race, and got the win, which was cool. I know it's not like the most like, oh my god, Ferrari challenge, you know, but there was a couple drivers there. And when I say a couple, I mean literally a couple. There was two other guys in my class that were like proper. They were good. They were good drivers. They're both young. But everyone else was nowhere really. But like, you know, he actually really challenged me. There was this kid. His name was Massimo Perina. I say kid. He's a few years older than me. I think 22 maybe. And he was very talented. Like he was super fast. You know, I felt like I put the qualifying lap of my life together. I was like, oh my god, I have to be on pole. It's Ferrari challenge. Like this was, come on, like this has to be it. And last lap he went like 200 faster than me, and that was disappointing. But yeah, it was fun. I mean, it's such a different way of driving, and I think I learned a lot. You know, just kind of learning, you know, traction control, ABS, heavier car. So it was a good experience. I was hoping it would lead to something outside of Ferrari Challenge. That kind of fell apart a little bit, but it was still fun and good experience to have.
Very nice, and always great to keep those opportunities available for the future, I suppose, which kind of brings us to the next point, which is what's the next plan from here? I know obviously you probably can't announce anything, but what's the future? Sounds like you're planning to stay on the open wheel ladder for the moment. That's the goal, I assume.
Yeah, well, as you know, this whole thing was delayed a little bit because I was actually on the phone with the team owner. You know, like I can't say too much, like you said, but I will be staying on the open wheel ladder. And I might have the unique opportunity to do 2 championships at once, maybe, if the right situation presents itself. But that'll be kind of a long shot. But yeah, it should be good. I should be at least be doing something is the goal.
That's perfect. That's always the first step. And then I suppose the longer term plan, what's the career goal? What's sort of the dream? I mean, I assume it's not mean to say the F1 ship has sailed a couple of years ago, probably. So yeah. What's the play? IndyCar is the dream, or where do you want to go from here?
My dream is to make money driving race cars, which might sound funny, but it's very hard to do that, you know, to actually have a salary just racing. Dream, like as you said, is IndyCar. I already mentioned I've been testing the USF Pro. Hopefully you can maybe race it next year and just move from there, really. I mean, they have a pretty great scholarship to move to Indy next if you win the championship. So kind of my whole goal now is to get, first of all, into USF Pro and then fight for the championship and get that scholarship because, you know, money, everyone talks about money, right? And money is definitely not endless for me. So I need to make the most out of this year. If this year doesn't go too well, I mean, I don't know what'll happen after that. So I really need to make the most of the opportunity I get this year potentially.
Well, I wish you the best of luck then. So you're considering all opportunities. I think that's always, from the outside at least, that always sounds like the best thing to do. It's always a bit weird when people are too tunnel visioned in on F1 or whatever they've got in mind. They're obviously, I guess the most opportunities lie elsewhere outside of those couple seats.
Absolutely.
Just one more question, a bit away from you, but because even though you've only really competed for one team on that level, I would love to hear a bit about how big of a difference do you think on the American open wheel ladder specifically do the teams play? Because that's always obviously discussed a lot in the fan community, but no one really has the answer. We can all speculate only. So.
Yeah, I'd say it's similar to the European side, to be honest. I wouldn't say it's too different. A good team makes all the difference. I could say, you know, I've been testing with Turn 3 Motorsport in the USF Pro, and they're known for having a really good street course setup. and we went to Sebring at this recent test, and that's kind of like the street course testing grounds. It's super bumpy and short. And I mean, we were just mega quick. Like it was the first time I was in a car where I was like, wow, like we're just, the team is just fantastic. You're like, I'm just faster than everyone else, and I'm not even trying that hard, which was great. And it really makes you realize like, wow, like it really does make a difference. And like, as you said, I've been with CrossLink Kiwi the last couple of years, and, you know, I love them. They're great. And they've given me fast cars, and in FR, we were, I think, the fastest team. You know, we had all the cars, the data. But then I've also struggled with them as well. You know, I was with them in USF Juniors, and I will say we did not have the fastest car there, and I could tell, and I can confidently say I did not have a championship winning car. You know, so it's just like putting yourself in the right position is super critical in motorsport, and you know, even on the smaller championships where you might not think of it as much, like, oh, I finished 8th or I don't even know, 7th, 8th in USF Juniors. You know, he can't be that special, but that was. It was almost the most I could have gotten, I think. You know, obviously, if I was back there now, maybe a 4th, 5th or something, but we weren't on the pace of the other teams, in my opinion. And, you know, I've been on both sides of it, where you can have a fast car sometimes, slow car sometimes, but absolutely being in the right team is important. And not only being in the right team, but being in the right car and the right team is also important as well, which I know you can't control that as much, but I know, controversial, I guess, but like there's always going to be differences in engines and gearboxes, and has this chassis been repaired? Is this one not? Is this one heavier? Some of them are just heavier than others. So there's always little things that you don't see on the outside that you got to watch out for when you're in this industry.
Yes, those are really the worst to make sense of without any inside knowledge. I think this year's F2 championship, obviously the best example for nobody knows what's going on from the outside. I don't know. Might as well have flipped a coin before the season, really. One last question, and this is sort of, obviously, you've said F1 brought you back into racing, but do you have any sort of role model, one driver you're looking up to specifically, or who, I don't know, inspired you to go down the path you're going down now? Anyone, like any name that comes to mind?
At the moment, not really. But when I started watching F1 again, which was 17, 18, I was a big Max fan. I have like all of his older Red Bull hats in my closet over there. And I'm still like a fan of his, but I wouldn't consider him like an idol anymore. You know, I'm trying to kind of make my own name, and like I have my favorites when you watch IndyCar and you watch F1, like you
For sure.
for people, but I wouldn't say I have like any clear idol that I like praise or anything like that. At least not anymore. I used to be still a Max fan, but I used to be like, you know, huge Max fan. So yeah, I guess that's it.
Yep, fair enough. Well, I think that's all I've got in mind. Thank you a lot for your time, and I hope to the people watching, you've also enjoyed it. If you have any questions, now I'm sure you can't ask him, but if you have any questions you maybe want to ask other drivers or in general drivers, drop them down in the comments, because I've got nothing planned, but hopefully this won't have been the last time. That's all I can say there. And otherwise, I thank you all for watching, and I hope to catch you in the next video.